gloss. You could use Krylon Fusion if you want. Fusion doesn't need primer, but always use primer. It's worth the extra 5 minutes, or excuse me, the extra $5. Alright, here we go. Plus the Krylon has a nice tip that allows you to go anywhere, and aim in any direction you want. Again, you want to start your overspray or your beginning spray away from it. And you just want to literally just put a thin little coat like that. Inspect it, make sure that it's not peeling up, bubbling, anything that spray cans are notorious for doing. Okay. And while you're at it, go ahead and start putting a thin little layer on your pieces. You're going to wait about a minute. You're going to do this again a couple of times. Then we'll do the thicker coat. It's now painted nice and pretty. Every now and then if you get a little bit of dirt or something, don't do what I do and try to rip it off right away. I had to wind up peeling everything off and starting over again. So if you get dirt or something, happens to fly on top, and it will, just let it dry, let that coat dry, and then you're going to take 600 to 800 grit wet sandpaper and just brush off nicely. I did use 800 grit sandpaper in between a couple of coats to even things out, because I did get, where something flew on top or anything like that. It's completely done. Don't have any shine on it whatsoever. So now we're going to go ahead and make that shine. You're going to want, again, your wet sand block, and you're going to want to make sure that it's got 800 grit sandpaper on it. You also want to make sure that you have sprayed the heck out of everything. So again, you don't want the edges to have such little paint that when you go by, it rips it off. And you want to make sure that this is cured for at least an hour to 2 hours. If you're patient enough, wait for it overnight. If it's cold in your area, give it a couple of days indoors. If you have never wet sandpapered before, just take some soap and rub it on the area that you're about to, sandpaper out. Again, no pressure. Let the sandpaper do its work by itself without any additional pressure from you. Make sure that you don't hit the edges too hard, and when you can, you want to try to go in nice light circles. If you go too hard on the edges, you will rip it out, so be very careful. And do not, under any circumstances, let the sandpaper get dry. Okay, so once you get done with the 800, you're going to want to try 1500 grit sandpaper. Again, even if you know how to wet sandpaper, I still recommend using the soap because it helps clean the sandpaper in between as well. Again, same thing as before, put soap wherever you're working. You may notice some imperfections that popped up, or maybe paint that didn't fully cure. At that point, you can choose to either A, touch it up, or you can respray paint that area. I'm going to touch it up by just, like for example here, there's a little missing part. I'm just going to take a little bit on the Q-tip and touch it after it's done before I do the next step. And the next step will be waxing. But for now, we're just sandpapering. You'll notice that it is getting smoother, and with the finer grit that you use, the smoother it's going to get. Our goal is to make it look like glass, so we'll see how that turns out. Also, make sure that the sandpaper's all the way tight in there, that there isn't too much loose area, because you don't want it to move back and forth. You want it to be nice and still while you're sanding. Last but not least is 2000 grit. So again, we're going to go all the way to the back. Okay. Very nice. Again, we're going to wash it. We want to make sure there's any bit of dirt and stuff that might have gotten in, or especially if you bought it at a hardware store, any kind of, sawdust or anything that can fly in there. You want to make sure that's all off. Let's do the last coat. Once it's done, you're going to want to wash it off with soap. Try not to use Dawn soap or anything abrasive. Just use nice liquid, the mild hand soap. No moisturizers, just, regular, mild, soft soap. Okay. You want to wash any bit off the side. Don't forget to, by the way, sand the sides if you want. I don't worry about that too much. since they're going to be in a case. But if at some point you think, hey, I'm going to sell my turntables, you know, at this point you should also be on eBay to order any additional stickers that you may want, or, you know, for example, these right here. Okay, and don't use hot water. You want to make sure you're using very lightly lukewarm water. I don't want it too cold either, so I want to make sure the water keeps the paint cured, if that makes sense. I'm going to go ahead and just keep on doing that. You'll notice there's still a little bit of soap there, because you'll see the bubbles where they're forming. Let that sucker air dry. You want to make sure that no lint or anything gets on it, because the next step is going to be to do a wax job on it. If you want to inspect it with a flashlight, you can. And it's beautiful. It actually feels like glass. It's not bumpy or anything, but the paint didn't go out smoothly, or at least dry out smoothly. And by that I mean, imagine if it rains on your car and there's a few little like spots or something from the acid rain or oxidation, and that's what it looks like. So in an inconspicuous area right there, I'm going to go ahead and try to use some of the Turtle Wax polishing compound cream, and if that works nicely, then I'm going to just try it on these edges here, see how well that works, then I'm going to wax it. So let's see how well that works out. If for some reason the polishing compound cream messes this area up, I'm just going to take some more 1500 and 2000 grit sandpaper and then take it right off and start that part over again. That's the great thing about wet sandpapering, is it'll take the wax off, but it's not going to mess up the actual paint. Okay, so I'm using the Turtle Wax polishing compound. It's best to make sure this is wet, including the cloth. I'm not going to use my orbital polisher for this, which, by the way, if you do not have one, go pick one up. They're like Walmart for 20 bucks, an orbital polisher. But let's go ahead and I'm just going to take it like that. And you want to do it in a back and forth motion, not circular, not for this. Okay. So once it's done, dry it just to wipe off the excess wax. And then you're going to take and you're going to very lightly buff it. That means with an orbital polisher, you don't want to leave it in there too long. Upon inspection after I'm done, I got most of it. It's very, it's a lot cleaner. Wax is going to pretty much perfect it out. The next step is going to be to use wax. I'm going to recommend the 3M Performance Finish. Actually, for anything you ever use, 3M really is the best. It's really good stuff. One of the things that I read online from this guy that did a really good job was to use the 3M hand glaze. I cannot find a hand glaze locally at all. So I got the Performance Finish car wax, and it works really nicely. Can't wait to see what it does with this one, because this is a lot cleaner than the last one that I did. So it's going to look great. So we'll do that in just a few moments. Okay. Let's go ahead and just start buffing it. Very light pressure on it. And don't be afraid to be generous on the wax. Next, we're going to go ahead and put the terry cloth buffing pad on there. Again, not a lot of pressure. Now what I like to do here is I like to go really slowly. I mean, just let it buff the heck out of it. I do one light pass through, and then I do one with a little bit more pressure. Okay, so once you do it, inspect it very carefully. And if there's an area that you just don't like, go ahead and add just a little bit dab of wax, or if there's any overspill, you can use some of that. And just kind of place it back on. Don't worry about drying it up too much. I mean, it looks great, but I know it can work a little bit better. So I'm just going to go ahead and add some more wax to act as a polishing agent. So I have very carefully gotten this camera to pretty much match what the turntable itself looks like. You'll notice again, super smooth finish. Is it reflective as heck? I mean, it is. You can tell how reflective it is. You can see the individual LEDs of this flashlight. If you did this with black paint, this should be a mirror. I mean, no joke. We're going to let that sit. But the next step is to put together the tone arm. So check out the other video, which is going to be assembling the tone arm. That's the fun part. That part might be in 1 or 2 pieces. So we'll see how it works. All right, let's do this.